It's about to go down with Marc and Cathey, a live coaching show about dropping ideas. Marc and Cathey coach and have conversations with brilliant idea creators who are reimagining the world through the expression of their words, thoughts, and actions.
Hey, everybody. I'm Cathey Armillas. Welcome to It's About to Go Down.
And I am Marc Williams, ready, super pumped, extra excited to introduce the man of the hour. He calls himself the 2021 third place? Man, you number one in my book. I'm going to tell you that right now. 2021 third place speaker in the World Championship of Public Speaking, but oof, more than that. More than that. Lean in on this one. The man who helps people to find greatness in themselves. Mr. Roger Caesar, who's going to talk to us today about the inner story. What's going on, Roger? Welcome to Us About to Go Down.
Oh, man, the energy is up here.
Woo!
Right now. I'm loving it, man. Thank you very much to both of you for inviting me to be here. It's about to go down.
Oh, it is.
Yes. Well, Roger, we got to start off with this because if there's anything that Cathey and I love talking about, anything we geek out over, it's storytelling. Cathey's going to talk about her story filing before we're done with this, right? Absolutely, guaranteed.
Yeah.
Tell us more about what this inner story is and why more people need to know about this inner story. Tell us the inner story on the inner story.
Yeah, quickly about that. First of all, you got to understand that we are all speakers here. We've been on stages many times. There are plenty of people who have stories that they want to share with people, but they're always afraid. And sometimes what we call the inner story is all it is that little person, the little person in you that oftentimes it's almost like the metaphor of wanting to run out and play. They just want you to let the door open and let them go run out and play. And oftentimes those inner stories, like that little child, we push back inside and say, you can't go outside right now. You're not allowed to go outside right now. Because that's those stories that are the most embarrassing. They're the ones that hurt you the most. Those are the ones that got you mad. Those are the ones that got you sad. And even those are the ones that you wanted to lock up behind here, throw the key away and don't want anybody to hear it. Or more importantly, you don't want to remember it yourself. So those are those inner stories, the little child in you that says, I just want to go outside and I want to have fun with whatever it is that's going on out there. Rain, sleet, snow, it doesn't matter. That's the stories. The rain, the sleet, and the snow are the same metaphors of your stories in those bad, sad, mad, or embarrassing times. Let them out. Let them go play. You have no idea who you're going to meet on the street that needs to hear that.
I already love that we're not. Marc. I already love.
Come on, Marc.
Let's go.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that a lot of times, isn't it the truth, though? Isn't it the truth, Marc? Like, we've learned that these are the most important things to talk about. That's why I call it the inner story. That's why I call it that. We could call it whatever you'd like, but I've called it the inner story because that's the same one that no one wants to talk about. They're afraid, right? How many times do you hear or you're talking to somebody and they say to you, I don't know if I really want to talk about that. I don't know if anybody's going to be interested in that, right? And I'm addressing that to you too, Cathey. And when you're up on stage and stuff, how many times do you hear people around you that will say, I want to talk about that, right?
Yep. I love, Roger, that it's not just a story or a narrative, by the way. You're painting it as like your inner story, but really it's multitudes of stories. I already love that. I think that there's a lot, especially for me, I've worked with a lot of people to give TED Talks. I can think of a couple. One in particular that I'm thinking of is a really awesome guy, Dr. Eric Tran, and he was talking about his awesome research at the Providence Cancer Research Center here in Portland, Oregon. Actually one of the foremost cancer research places in the world, by the way. And they're doing a lot of gene therapy, and it's really geeky, nerdy stuff. And for the most part, if you listen to him talk, you're like, I have no idea what you're saying, but good job, like real good job. But I remember like when I was coaching him, and I was listening to him, and I was trying to understand a lot of what he was saying, but then I just stopped and I said, can I just ask you a question? Why did you get into this? Like, how did you get into this? And the answer that came after that was like, when he was a little kid, he was at a family reunion, and he heard his grandmother vomiting in the background, and he asked some of the elder family members, like, what's going on. And she was going through chemo with colon cancer, and so she was actually sick from that, and that stuck with him. And then years later he would go on to do this. And when I asked him, well, can we just start with that? And he's like, oh, I don't know. It's like, no, you should start with that. That's the human thing that we will all actually understand and relate to. And so, Roger, I love that. And it was the best opening because people understood his why before they understood his what or his how.
And I like how you said that. I like how you said it. It's they understand the why behind it, especially when you're giving a talk or you're presenting something that is technical or could really confuse people if you just go straight into the data and the details, right? And same with me when I'm coaching individuals and they want to know, well, where do I start? I say, listen, open your mind. Open the door and look at what you have in front of you. Unfortunately, you're worried about putting all that technical stuff that needs to go into the speech, but I'm not connecting with you until you tell me why.
Yeah.
Right? So I love that you helped him to see that part.
Here's what I'm wondering, to build off of this. Cathey, I'm wondering if you go back to that moment, did he ever explain why he didn't want to share that story?
Didn't feel relevant to him. In his circles where he talks, it's always like it's other doctors, it's research, it's data, it's these things. And even in those circles, like I feel like what Roger was saying, I spend a lot of my time talking to people that are in those roles and saying, hey, we're humans first before we're anything else.
Yep.
Well, that's fascinating to me because I'm thinking about, and I was running a workshop the other day where somebody used the phrase, close your ears, Cathey.
They
said story fatigue. And I was like, shut your mouth.
The good old Marc Williams, shut your mouth.
I love that.
But I get that there are certain fields, certain industries, certain professions where they're very like data driven and data oriented. And sometimes people feel like I can't tell that. I can't tell the story because the audience I'm speaking to, they don't want to hear it or they're not accustomed to hearing it. And what it makes me wonder for the two of you is, what makes us think that people who are even data oriented don't want to hear stories?
Oh, they don't want to hear boring stories. Sorry, Roger. I can't help myself. I'm like, if they're fatigued, it's because those stories are boring. That's what they are. And they're not telling them well.
Facts. That's what it is. Listen, I'll give us a similar story. I have a client who I've been working with now for almost 2.5 years. Love it. She just keeps coming back and we just keep working on new projects that she has. She is a real estate mogul here, right? And every month she has to do a presentation to her team and to other people who are prospects wanting to come in and purchase townhouses or condos in the area. And she says, every single time, this is when we first started, she said, every single time when I started my speeches, I started with, okay, this is where downtown Toronto is. In downtown Toronto, you can start blah, 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 blah. We have 18 square feet here, da, 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 this is it. If you are looking for a place for a family, this is the place you want to live at. It's got this, and all the amenities and everything. For me, I just sat there going, okay.
Wake me up when you have something good.
All right, tell me something else. But then, just like you, I said to her, what was one of the greatest moments that you had as a child growing up in your home? What was it? And she goes, oh, yeah, my father always taught us this. And she starts talking about how her father came from Mexico, was not necessarily poor, but just doing well. And he scratched and he clawed to make his way. And he had these things that he did all the time. They were like rituals he would do every day. And as they grew up, all the kids, all like their siblings, they all started to adopt into that same character that he would do. But he always made the house feel so warm.
Yes.
There. Said there is what you start with. Do you want people to feel like when they walk into this place, it feels warm? I can tell you right now, growing up, that was the feeling I had. I always loved that my dad made it feel warm to me to come home. We felt like we were in a place that felt safe, felt comfortable. And to me, that became the real reason why I wanted to ensure that anybody who gets a home or a condo or a townhouse from us feels like they're walking into a home that will make their family feel warm.
Oh. Yeah. I'm moving to Toronto, by the way.
Right?
Yeah.
And she did one of those, oh my God, I didn't know you could take this and use to this. I said, it's not necessarily that you want to oversaturate those who are data driven, but sometimes what you need to do is connect. It's the connection. Hey, why do you feel this is the place I need to buy? Some people, no doubt about it. There are people in this world, just give me the facts. Give me the data. That's all I need. I'm good. But the majority of people want to feel that they can trust, connect, and love you in some way, shape, or form. They want to feel that they can do those three things in some way, shape, or form, or a combination of them. I want to trust, I want to connect, and I want to love this person. And if they're telling me something or they're selling me something, I want to feel like, okay, they've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. They're good. I like what they're saying. Let's go with that.
I love that. And what it reminds me of is some of the work that I've done with coaching people, especially around job seeking, right? So the resume, the interviewing and stuff like that. And what I have found similar to your story, Roger, is I will sit with people and ask them questions about their career and about amazing things that they've done to help.
Right.
And sometimes it takes a couple of questions for them to then tell a story that I always enjoy telling the story back to them, because I think sometimes there's a magic switch when some people hear you retell the story and they're like, oh, that's a great story. And I'm like, yeah, I just listened to you.
That's your story.
Right, it's your story. But the reaction that I get that really stands out to me even more than that is people will say, like, either one, I almost forgot about it, or two, I didn't think it was a big deal. And I think that's what happens sometimes. People have these inner stories that they put on the back burner, sort of like what you said, and they don't realize how impactful those moments are, right? They treat these like little small moments and don't realize how big those moments are. And I wish that we could help people to see that the smallest moments are some of the most important inner stories we need to tell.
Yeah, I love what you said, Mark, and I often do this. Even then, I just had another podcast that I was on, and I always talk about this. It's the three R's, right? It's to relate, recall, and react. So it's
Mm.
relate, recall, react. So what we do as coaches, and this is on the coaching side of it, when we're trying to get our clients or our clients to get those stories out, get them out. Okay, so what we do is we start telling them, we ask them the questions that you did. You ask them the questions. Now, what you do is you relate to them. Okay, I could see what you're talking about because I remember it happened to me. That generates a conversation now between you and your client because you're looking deeper. You're trying to get that story that's still sitting in there that you're scratching out to get out, but they're not giving it to you. So as you talk to your clients, you want to first relate with them. Oh, I see what you're saying. You know what? I had a similar story, or I remember somebody who had something similar that happened, right? Or, oh my God, really? That happened? I can't even imagine you going through
Mm.
that. I can't even imagine. So it's the relatability. You start there. Then it's the recall, which is what you did. So let me get this straight. And you tell the story back. What does that do? Now it makes them understand that you heard them. You heard them.
Mm.
They feel validated that, hey,
Mm.
he actually listened to everything I was saying. And he hears me. He hears what I'm going through or what my story is or what I'm struggling with. So you recall the story back to them. And then the final thing that you do is now you turn around and you react. So now you give them the advice that they need. Now, okay, so we see where you're going. Here's what we should do, or this is what I think would be the best way to approach this story, this certain situation, and that's it. So it's the three R's: relate, recall, and react.
Roger, I love that you're walking concepts. I love this because it was first the trust, connect, and love, and now the three R's. Oh, you are speaking my language. I love this. I want to go back. That was so good. I love that. If you're coaching, and you don't even have to be in a coaching situation, like
It's
everyday communication and people relating to people. I think the
yeah.
biggest block and the biggest barrier is always like there's this invisible wall, and if you don't pierce through it, even if you're just talking to one person, you're like waiting for them to finish so that you can say the thing that you want to say. They don't you're not hearing them. And so I love that you said that. Oh, Mark, you made me itch. I was like, oh, I come across so many people that are like, but I don't have these great stories that you have. I'm like, you think I remember the story from when my weird uncle taught me how to drive? Like, I have a story file. So you were right. I'm going to put it out there to the audience. Like everybody has amazing stories, and every story has 100,000 angles you could use it for. So
Mhm.
many angles, whether it just be kind of just like having a conversation where you're just relating with one person or on a stage. Um, and so it's really just the art and the discipline of gathering it. I have a
Mhm.
story file that has over 2,000 story notations in it. And the biggest thing that you need to do too is kind of add some categories to it. Oh, this is a family story. It's a lost
Mhm.
story. It's a happened to me story. It's a lessons learned stories. These are some of the categories that I have in, but it's just, kind of reminding our audience, because the three of us, we speak a lot. We know the value of a story, even a little tiny thing that we think is not important can be the main story in a keynote.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to take this even a step further because, Roger, when you mentioned the inner story at the beginning,
Mhm.
you talked about that little person in you
Mm.
who wants to come out and play.
Mhm.
And you mentioned wanting to come out and play because there are some embarrassing stories, some sad stories, some stories that are make you angry. And what I hear when you say that is there's something therapeutic, there's something self-caring, there's something mindful
Mm.
about telling those stories. And I know we are speakers and we are storytellers, so we're always thinking about our audience. This is a moment, I think, also to tell your inner story for you, because sometimes we've got that story locked inside. And it needs to come out and play, not so we could just have fun and tell a story that like makes us feel full of joy and glee. But sometimes the story is locked so deep inside that it's causing us pain. And we need to let it out. We need it to play around with other little children's storytellers. Right. So we can see we're not alone in that story.
Remember, and I know I want to preface this by saying I know that not everybody has the greatest childhood. So I want to be careful when I say this, because some will say, well, I never had a great childhood, and they don't understand. But this is what I want them to try to understand. As children, remember how we were. There was a fearless part of us. We'll grab a bug. We'll run out and we'll jump over, a lake if we had to. If we could jump over a lake, we're jumping over a lake. If we had our bikes and we wanted to jump ramps, we jump ramps. If we wanted to play this particular game, we did it. Didn't matter, because in our minds as children, we said we could do anything. We thought we could do anything, right? When you're 4 years old, 3 years old, you're picking up the biggest bug, and that bug might be dangerous, right? But to us, it look, oh, that's cute. I want to grab it, right? Or a turtle or something like that. Guess what? When we get to become adults, what are we doing? What's the first thing we always do? We think. We stop and we think, ooh, I don't want to go near that. Oh, I don't think I can handle that. Oh, that's too hard. We start doing that. What does a kid do? A kid waits for the opportunity to run outside. If your mom or your dad says, go on outside and play, before you could even say twice, kid's gone, right? That's what I mean by that inner story. The inner person is the one that says, I'm okay to do this, and I'll figure it out after. I'm going to go. I'm going to go, because that story needs to come out. It's sitting inside, locked in, like that kid who was sitting there at the door and can see that it's beautiful outside and their friends are all out there. And all he wants to hear is his mom or his dad say, you know what, go on. Or your guardian go on outside. And you burst out. That's the same thing with that. It's sitting there. It's sitting right there. And all it needs is for someone to say, let it out, go, right? Go. And it's not about whether they are happy moments. No, it's that those things are trapped and they're waiting behind that screen door to just say, can I go out? Can I go out? Right? So that's what it is when it comes to the metaphor about the little kid and the, going outside and playing. It's getting the opportunity to let those things out of you.
I love that you said that we think. You were saying the bugs, and Marc was already like, bugs, I'm not. He was already thinking about bugs, right? But it was a visual interpretation of how we probably paint our own narratives and thinking about our own stories. We have stories that we're like, ooh, I feel kind of ashamed about that, or that's embarrassing, because we're painting that thinking onto it. Oh, somebody will think this about it if I don't. But you're right. I mean, I think that the stories that connect the most are the ones that go straight through to the heart, right? The ones that you're like, you know what, I'm going to be vulnerable and I'm going to share this. Marc, I know you and I personally, we've become such good friends over the 10 plus years that we've known each other because of some massive amounts of stories that we've shared with each other.
That's right. And in addition to that word vulnerability, right? That's such a powerful word. I heard you use the word, Roger, trapped. And when I heard that, what I wrote down in my notes was untrap your inner story.
Excuse me for
I know.
for a moment.
All right, hold on a second.
Let me get my pen and pad here for a second. I know this is not what you're supposed to do in the middle of an interview.
No, that's exactly what you should be doing.
Right?
That's what we're all doing.
I am writing that. Hold on a second. Let me say that again. Untrap.
Look at Marc.
Inner story.
I've been hanging around Cathey long enough,
Beautiful.
You've been hanging around Marc long enough.
That was good. That was good.
That's so good.
I just wish we would. And, Cathey knows one of my favorite talks is a talk called Black Excellence, AKA Against All Odds, right? And I always tell people, I remember the first time I ever gave that talk or a version of that talk, I was asked to speak to a group of young Black men. There's a school of 6,000 students, 1,500 kids on each grade level. And that year, out of 1,500 10th graders, only 10 of them were young Black men, right? Wow, that's such a small number. And I remember being asked to speak to them and not really even knowing what to say. And I remember I kind of dug deep and looked at some of those inner stories that I had trapped inside. And for me, it was therapeutic to let it out. It was therapeutic to let that little Mark come out and play. And what was even more therapeutic about it is when a couple of those young men came up afterwards and spoke about how it either touched them or they related to it, which meant that the little boy that was trapped inside, that inner story that was trapped inside, who felt lonely, didn't feel so lonely anymore. And that inner story, that little person inside, also discovered that through his own inner story, he could be helpful to somebody else.
What it is.
That's the beauty of untrapping that inner story.
That's what it is. And we've kind of been touching on it this whole time. You never know who is waiting to hear that story, right? So while it is a moment to share it with other people, yes, it's also therapeutic for yourself, right? I think it was my good friend and fellow world champion there, Verity Price, who said to me, I love her so much, man, but I remember her saying something along the lines of, but don't tell a story if you haven't dealt with it yourself yet.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you have to understand it. And I got a great story for you to hear on that for myself. But I learned when she said that, I started going back into, it was almost like I went back in time and I was realizing, oh my God, how many times did I share something that I wasn't ready to share yet? And it just messed me up. So you got to be able to, from what I gather and what I remember her saying, and I love it, was you have to take that same story that you have, but you have to deal with it. You have to know that you have dealt with the situation before you can now be therapeutic to someone else about that situation. Do you see what I'm saying? You have to be able to do that. You cannot tell me you've gone through something and you're on stage and you're going crazy, screaming, crying, bawling your eyes out because it still hurts so much. You can be emotional. But what do they say to us, Mark? You could take us to the edge, but don't take us over, right? Take us to the edge, but don't take us over. So can I share a quick story with you right now?
Yeah.
Go for
it. I've been to the World Championships, to the World Championship of Public Speaking 4 times. And my very first time was in 2015. Now, I'm going to give the Coles notes, but you'll understand where I'm going with this. My story, when I started in January, remember we started all back in January. Now it's even further back, but we started in January. You figure a story. I said, you know what? I want to do a story about my grandmother. My grandmother was a truck, a train, like just a locomotive, right? 95 years old. She can walk from New York to New Jersey and be all right. Okay. She's fine. She can walk it and come back and still have time, right? That's how strong she was. And I love that about her. And I always said, you know what, she's 95. I want to do a story for her that just to talk about all the great lessons that she taught me over the years. You know, who cares? It's my first time being in the international. I'm just going to try it, see what happens. It got me all the way to the World Championship of Public Speaking semifinals. Okay. But before I got there, 3 weeks before I was going there, I get a call from my mom. My grandmother lives in Grenada. I get a call from my mom. Oh, your grandmother a couple of weeks ago fell. She was coming off the bus and she slipped and she cut her foot. And she's not been doing well with it and stuff like that. So what's going on? What's happening? Well, you know what? She didn't take care of it. The old school grandparents, they always think, oh man, I'll just put a little bit of alcohol on it. It should be fine. Not a problem. Whatever. Meanwhile, I'd love to do her voice, but that's just a thing. Nah, don't worry about that, man. Just have some lime on that. That ain't nothing. Right? Boom. That's it. But you see, what happened is that it was so deep, it actually needs stitches, and she got gangrene in it. And it went all the way up, and they had to eventually amputate her leg, right? You take a leg off of a person who is so independent, could do anything, and what happens? There's no reason for them to feel like they can live. So my mom said, she's not doing well, you should come down. So I came down there, I saw her, and if I could describe her, the quintessential big mama, quintessential big mama, that was Grams. That was how she was. But when I got there, 2 weeks before I was headed to the World Championship, she looked like this. She looked like this. You can imagine the emotion that I had right there, because this is like when it comes to influential people in my life, my mom is here and my grandmother is like right there. It barely moves, right? That's how close it is. And so I did the speech for her, and I told her, look, Grams. And she sat there. She was coherent. She didn't speak at that time, but she was coherent enough to laugh at the jokes and smile. And then, every moment she understood. And I said, I'm doing this speech on your birthday in Las Vegas. So you can't do anything foolish, right? And she looked at me and she just went like this, right? And I walked away. Now here's the catch. I walked away with tears streaming down my face, because I knew I wasn't doing the speech until the 13th of August. Her birthday is on the 9th. But I wanted her to hold on to something, right? I wanted to hold on to something. So I said, please just hold on to that for me. And her birthday came, wished her a happy birthday. We did a video call and everything, got all the kids and everybody out there to wish her a happy birthday. And the next day I'm heading out to work, and I'm running around trying to get some things done. I get a phone call from my dad. Hey, Dad. My dad always answers me like, hey, boy. Well, that's how he'd answer me. And this day he turned around and goes, hey, how you doing? I go, whoa, what's going on? He goes, well, what are you doing right now? I go, what's going on? He goes, are you driving? I go, what's going on? He goes, well, you already know. My grandmother let herself go the following day. I want that to sink into you and your audience for a second, because she literally held her promise to me. She held the promise that day and said, I'm not letting go until he speaks, and then I will. So when I got that call from my dad that day, I was literally, I lost my mind. I absolutely lost my mind. I was crying like crazy. And all I kept thinking was, why did I tell her the 9th? Why didn't I just tell her the 13th? Why didn't I just do it? And all that guilt. You ever had that moment when you feel that guilt for doing something that you didn't have to do, but you did? I felt that instant guilt. So when I got there, I've got all this in my head. I still got to perform a speech for her. I remember my district director saying, look, I'm hurting for you. Do you want me? I mean, I gotta ask this question. Do you want me to call the second place person and fly them in if you can't do this? And I remember, Mark, my whole thought in that moment, I can't lie, man. I was selfish as hell. I'm like, are you mad? This is my first time getting to the World Championship of public speaking. I'm not letting this one go. I don't know if I'm going to get back here again. Right. Mm-hmm. So I went from sad to like, no. I can do this. I can do this. But I couldn't. I had everything up here going crazy. Right. Mm-hmm. And even Mark, you've been to the World Championships where you have to go for your briefing and stuff. And you're in this big room with all these people and they're all talking. Some of them trying to intimidate you, sometimes trying to be good to you, but they're not really being that good. And then there are those that are just absolutely awesome, right? But I had a group in that year that a lot of the people were talking and saying, oh yeah, you gotta, when you come to the World Championship of Public Speaking, man, you gotta come with your A game. You gotta have everything working for you according to plan. You gotta be perfect on that stage. You gotta have a prop. When you come on this stage, you got to have props. There's no doubt about it. They don't want to see you if you don't have props. I'm sitting there saying, I don't got no prop. I don't got anything. Here's my point. I let all of those things distract me because I had not dealt with it yet. And so when I went on that stage, or before I got on that stage, I actually ran into a convenience store and I bought a mirror for no damn reason. No reason whatsoever, but I thought I need to have a prop. And there's one part of my speech where I say, if you're searching for that one person who will change your life, take a look in the mirror. It all begins with you. And I always did it with my hand, like this. But I figured, hey, they said I got to have a prop. So I bought the mirror, try to put it in my pocket, and I'm on stage and I get to that part. I pull it out. I say, take a look in the mirror. It all begins with you. I go to put it back in my pocket. Marc and Cathey, the thing won't go back in. I am on stage in front of 300 people in the room, and this mirror will not go back in my pocket. To the point where I tried one last try, even while I was doing my speech, and it fell on the ground and broke. Oh. That is my experience at the World Championship of Public Speaking the first time. Instantaneously, I started to bawl on stage and try to still speak. You know that type, Mark. You know that type, Cathey, the gun. When you want to get things right. That's how I was saying my speech at that moment. I did not deal with it. You know, in hindsight, yes, you want to go to these things because you never know if you're going to ever get a chance to go back. But in hindsight, it was probably the worst thing that I can do 2 days after finding out my grandmother passed away. To go on stage, 3 days, sorry, to go on stage and to try to perform. Worst thing. You know? Yep.
That story touched me on so many levels.
Yeah.
Right. And not just the story, but even the you know, Cathey said it earlier. You could take a story and tell it in so many different angles. And I appreciate the story. And I'm going to tell you another reason why I appreciate it. You said it. We all have some tough inner stories to tell. And I don't know if the two of you have ever been in a situation where you had to tell one of those tough stories. And I know I was asked, like, how do you tell that story over and over again? Right? Like whether you're a keynote and it's your signature speech, or you're doing a contest and now you've done it for the umpteenth round. Like, how do you keep telling that story and not like lose it? I remember when telling the story about my mom and somebody asked me, like, how do you, and you know, sometimes you hear those questions and you come up with something, you say something. And there's a point when you might realize that the reason why the person is asking you how you can go up there and tell that story without breaking down, the reason why they're asking you that, I believe, is because they have an inner story that they want to let out and they don't know how to let it out. And I realized, just like you just said, the reason why I was able to go up there is because I had dealt with it. So I want to thank you for adding that piece because I think that's so important that we do have an inner story to untrap. But first, we do have to deal with it first.
Yes.
That was brilliantly told. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that was really awesome. I love that. Going back to, having, this analogy, by the way, I really, really love the untrap your inner story, Marc. It's such a good, it's such a good analogy.
I'm gonna have to give you a shout out when I say it, man.
Yeah. Thank you. That was a really good way to put it. Because when I think about that and going back to the analogy of the little kid who just wants to go out, doesn't matter. There's these stories that want to get out, but now we're also adding some discernment to it. And it makes me think, if you were doing a TED Talk on this one, your third TED Talk, Roger, right? If you were doing another TED Talk and it was like on untrapping your inner story, I think that there would be a how to it. Like, when do you do it? How do you do it? So I love that we're starting to kind of talk about that. Sometimes I think we share stories with people and we surprise other people by how much we have dealt with it. You say something really like Roger, I just listened to your 2021 world champion speech and you talked about getting shot and your friend getting killed instantly. And I'm like literally getting ready and I was not expecting that's what happened. And I was like, it hit me, but I could tell when you were telling it that you've obviously dealt with that. And that's a story that you can share and you should share, because there's probably a lot more layers to that story than what you were able to tell in that moment. I don't know. My brain's just going in that space of like that, because now we're kind of talking about the how, and I love that. Yeah. And it's adding a little bit of discernment to who you say it to, when and how, the right time. Actually, ironically, you were talking about that.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right, Cathey. If you don't deal with the story, if you don't deal with the situation, it's very hard in two ways. Number one, it's hard on your audience because now they're seeing you struggle to say the story. They're watching you and they're feeling sorry for you. So they're no longer listening anymore. You're becoming the distraction in a bad way. Not that they mean to, but think about it. Marc, Cathey, I'm saying this both to you and even to your audience members. How many times have you heard somebody speaking and it is so uncomfortable for you to listen to them because they're telling a story? Are you now listening or you're worried about them? Like, oh boy, are they going? Oh, they don't look right up there talking about that story, man.
I need to hug them.
Yeah, I need to hug them or something, or please somebody get them off the stage or something like that. Like you've lost your audience from hearing the story now because of everything else that's going on, right? And you have to learn to deal with that. You have to learn to deal with it. The shooting happened when I was 21, right? It took me till I was 30 before I could actually go back to the gravesite, right? Because I had blamed myself so long in that period of time that I could not let it go. There was anger. I often said the people that were around me in those moments, in that time when I was rebelling and I was losing it, I gotta give them like cars, because I mean they stuck by me. I gotta give them all the gifts in the world because they stuck by me all the time, and I thank them for not giving up, because it was rough for that period of time for me. But then years later, when I finally started sharing the story, and I even have one on YouTube called "Got Your Back." That's the story. It's on my YouTube channel called "Got Your Back." It elaborates the story, right? And I talk about it in a fun way, but still you get the idea of what happened. But the reality is that if I never got through it and finally said, okay, little boy, you can go out now and play. You can go out and play and tell the story now. It's okay. I wouldn't have been able to do it. I wouldn't have been able to go on the world stage and share that story. I wouldn't have been able to now have a signature keynote speech on that particular topic when I'm dealing with anti-violence and anti-guns and everything like that. When I'm talking about the stories that I've gone through and helping people to understand that, you know what, look, your life is not defined by your past. Refine it for your future, right? Your life is not defined by your past. Refine it for your future, right? That's what I like to say and tell people. But it would have never happened if I did not deal with it.
I love this line. I mean, the line you just said was so poetic. There was a line that you said right beforehand. Little boy, you can go out there and play.
Go out there and play.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's because I just watched this comedy special with Roy Wood Jr. And for some reason right now, it's escaping me the opening line. And without giving too much away, I mean, he definitely speaks about how, as a society, we are losing our connection with other people. And so I have to look up what the opening line was. But the opening line became the closing line. And it just really emphasized the importance of his message. And listen, you've already got this signature speech. You've already got this keynote. You haven't got this TED Talk yet, this third one. So, you know what I'm saying? Well, let's talk about that.
Go do another one.
Right? But I would love to put into your proverbial playground the thought of opening up, or at some point, little boy, you can go out there and play.
Yeah. You know what?
He's like, wait, let me write that one down too.
I say it, but you know what? I don't always write these things down. But yeah, you know what? Look, it's true. At the end of the day, that's what it is. That is what it is. It's that inner little boy, little girl that is sitting there that's saying, "Can I go out? Can I go out? Right? Can I please go out?" There's a story. And again, it eludes me right now, but there was a story and it was similar to that. And that's kind of where I got that whole concept from, because the story was, it was a spirit. And I got to remember what the name of the thing was. And this spirit, she had died tragically, but she was going around. It wasn't necessarily haunting people, but trying to get them to find her, find where she was, right? So her soul was not resting. And it was trying to get this people in this place to find where she is, actually where her body is. And she managed to do it. And then all of a sudden it was like she went, and it let go, right? It's the same thing, same type of situation where you're trying so hard. And this little person is saying, come on, I gotta be able to tell this, but you gotta deal with it. So can I go? So that you could finally say, okay, go on out. Share this now. Go out there and play.
So here's where I gotta add props for your outfit, your shirt. Like, now's a good time to call it out, right?
You matter
a lot. I love that there's a lot in there too. And I think it goes hand in hand, Roger, with what you're saying. The story in you, the little Mark, the little Roger, the little Cathey inside needs to come out. You matter too. Like, you're also talking to your inner story. I really find it fascinating that if all three of us were to go, oh, what's like the most embarrassing or hard story that we haven't told yet, I bet you we would find that the thing that makes us not want to talk about it is also the thing that makes people relate to it so much, whatever that thing is. And it's such a weird thing that we try to always like paint other people's perceptions of us, when the biggest connection that you can have with another human is sharing a vulnerable story. Mark, I'll never forget the story you told me about a student of yours. And I know you already know which story it is, right? Because you're telling me about this student, and I'm listening to it and my heart is just like ripping out of my chest for this particular story that Mark told me. And I'm feeling everything in this story. These are the stories that that connect us the most. And yet we somehow want to stay on this weird surface level. How's it going, Roger? How's the weather?
Yeah.
What have you done? Like, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I think untrapping your story too is giving yourself the permission to go outside and play, and it's allowing yourself to go that deep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
I love the theme of connection as well. Cathey knows I do a lot of work with like community building with people, and sometimes the real key of it is getting people to share things that other people in the community haven't heard before. Exactly what you're saying, Cathey, because we think we know a lot about the people who are sitting right next to us, standing right next to us. And there are things that we don't know. There are inner stories that we don't know. And to both of your points, sometimes, and I remember being in one workshop where this person was like, the question you just asked, that was so deep that I don't even want to write anything down in the journal. Like, I don't want to, she wasn't ready to untrap that story.
Mm.
But what I realize, and what I hope she realizes from our conversation today, is when she can get to the point after dealing with it to untrap that story, it's going to bring that community closer together.
Yes.
Right. No
You
question
know,
about it. No question about it. You know, even that story that I told you there with my grandmother and being on that stage, you talk about connections. Even in the worst moments, you never know how you can connect still to people, right? That was probably the worst performance I'd ever had. And yet still, one of the greatest things came out of it. The following year, I went back to the World Championships, and my whole mentality was redemption. Just go on the stage, finish your speech. Make sure you finish it. You have fun. You enjoy yourself up
don't
there.
break a
I
mirror.
don't care. Yeah, I don't care about mirrors. I don't care about nothing. I ain't bringing no props. I know now I don't have to. So I'm going out there, and I just want to be able to say I performed on the world stage, and I did it, whether I win or not. That was my mentality in 2016. But here's the story behind the story that happened. That's the only, of all the things to remember in Washington that year, the one thing that I remembered the most was I'm sitting in the Marriott lobby. I've got a bunch of people that are from my district around me, where it's just the first or second day that we're there. And we're all sitting there getting ready to go for dinner. And all of a sudden, in the midst of all of that, some little man starts to weave his way through all of them. And he comes up to me and he looks me in my eye and he goes, you're the one. And I'm looking. I don't
What
know
did I
who this
do?
guy is. Yeah, I don't know who this guy is. And everybody around is kind of wondering what's going on. And he goes, you're the one that gave the grandma story last year, weren't you? And I said, yeah. He goes, you have no idea how much it meant to me for you to share that story.
Oh.
I went back home and I dropped my bags down at my house, jumped in my car, and I went straight to my grandmother's house. And I gave her the biggest hug I have ever given her. And I said, I will never take you for granted again.
Biggest impact ever.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
To this day, him and I are still in contact. To this day, every time I go to a conference or a convention and I see him, we take a picture together. He was in California this year, and we saw each other and we took a picture again. But again, the power of connecting to an audience through stories. Now, even though that was a bad one and the way it happened, he at least acknowledged and realized the story that I was sharing and how it happened. And he got it. He got it, right? It touched him that much that he actually, and what do we talk about? We ask people to have a call to action. If your story and your speech is so strong, people will actually do what you actually said. They will do it. He did just that. My story was to appreciate the people you have in your life, you know, because they could. I had to switch the ending of my story at that time. It was supposed to be a nice, beautiful song and dance off to the meadows, but I changed the ending to say, appreciate the people while they are here, because you never know when they could be taken away from you in the blink of an eye, right? And he went and did it.
Yeah.
Right? So that's, again, why we share these things, man. This is why we share them.
I'm gonna add a layer to this, because y'all got me thinking. We all around our families, we share stories, and any kids in our families are always like, yep, I heard that story before. I know that one. You just made me think that, you know, one thing that would be awesome to do would be to share stories that you wouldn't normally share with your family. Like, it made me even think, my father's, you know, getting up there in age, and he's got a lot of health problems right now. And I've heard all of his stories over and over again. But what if I just ask him a couple of questions? Like, he served in the military during the Vietnam War. Like, there's things I could ask him in particular, right? Where do we find those trapped stories? Like, I want to untrap some of mine, even for my own family. And I would love to help people that I love untrap theirs. Like, stop playing the same record over and over and over.
Do you know
how happy?
Do you know how happy he would be in that moment? That's what you got to look at. Do you know how elated he would be if you were to turn around and come to him and say, Dad, can you tell me a story about this?
Yeah.
Oh, I remember my grandmother would do that all the time. Graham, so what actually happened in that moment? Well, let me tell you. And she pipe up and, oh, let me tell you what's going on there. Let me tell you something here. Boom. Right? What do you mean? That's beautiful what you're saying. We need to do that, because sometimes they always are doing the talking, but if they see that we're interested, you're asking the right questions. As you said, you know, what are the questions you ask? Well, if you know something about the person, find out. People love when people are interested. They feel validated when you want to know more about them, right? That's why when you go to a networking event, never start by telling people what you do, right? Never start that way. Start by asking them, hey, tell me about yourself. What is it that got you to come here? Oh, well, let me tell you. Boom, 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 right? Why is that the case? Because and I went to an event just last night, and that's what was happening. That's what I do. I always go there. I don't say anything about me until it comes in organically. But I'll always say, tell me about yourself, man. I'd love to know what got you here. Oh, their face lights up. They start telling their story. They start talking about their business and everything like that. And I go, wow, that is so amazing. So what do you do, Roger? Well, I tell you, I can actually help you with that because of this. Oh, boom, right? I love doing that because people feel like they're on top of the mountain when somebody wants to know something about them, right?
Yeah.
That was awesome.
I think we figured out that the big takeaway is help other people untrap their stories too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. We can go out and be evangelists on that.
Can I see you guys doing the snaps? Can I do the snaps too, man? Damn.
Yep. Mark's like, oh, that's my big takeaway. Well, you know, we have taken this full circle in so many different ways, and it's been such a awesome conversation that it went by in a blink of an eye. But for me, it was such a great crescendo at the end of like, oh, I'm going to help people untrap their stories. So that was my takeaway. Mark, I'm going to ask you yours, and then I'm going to end with Roger because he is our special guest. What about you, Mark?
I think the takeaway, first of all, I love that. I love how you geniusly did that there at the end. I think my takeaway is around how you have to deal first with your inner story before you can share it. That really, that hit home.
Yeah, I love that. Roger, how about you? This is your idea, and you so brilliantly shared it with us. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I think what I got out of this, and I'm gonna leave it with something else, but I want to say this. I love the fact that we seen that sometimes once you deal with a story, once you deal with a situation, that inner person is itching to go out there and have fun sharing it with other people who are waiting so badly to hear it because they may be going through the same things themselves. And I'll say this to end, and you may have to write this down. Your stories are the gateway to your soul and the pathway to an audience's heart.
Oh,
I'm going to repeat that. Your stories are the gateway to your soul and a pathway to the audience's heart.
Oh, so great. I love that. Roger, thank you. Thank you for that power close and such a great call to action for everybody watching. If people wanted to follow you and find out more about you, because you're freaking awesome, where can they find you?
You can get me at rogercaesar.com. Please spell the last name correctly. It's CAESAR. rogercaesar.com. You can get me on Instagram at caesar.empire. I'm on LinkedIn. I just got on Facebook. Just look me up. Lord, that's another story all on its own, but I'm on Facebook finally. And I have a YouTube channel. Just subscribe to my YouTube channel as well, Roger Caesar, CAESAR.
Oh, go follow Roger because he's awesome. And Roger, thank you for being here with us today. Thanks for sharing this awesome idea and giving us a space that the three of us could geek out on this awesome topic. Marc, thank you for the Untrap Your Inner Story. That was so good. Thank you for the place we got to where like helping other people untrap their stories and deal with your story first. Don't be the one out there like, crying on the stage. But if you do, as Roger, so beautifully pointed out, you still might touch somebody, even if it feels like the worst thing ever. So thank you, Roger. And anybody watching, you know how we roll. We're 10 seasons into this. We have the most awesome people on. If you know somebody that should be on our show, reach out to us because it always goes down. These conversations, they're awesome. They're amazing. And this time it went down. It'll go down next time. So stay tuned and thanks for watching another episode of It's About to Go Down.